In this video, I'm going to install Rob Carver's open source Python-oriented backtesting and trading engine, PySystemTrade. There are 4 things to note up front. Firstly, I'm running Windows. Secondly, I've already installed the Anaconda Python platform. For the record, my Python version is 3.8.5. And thirdly, the integrated development environment, IDE, that I do my coding in is Jupyter. Finally, and fourthly, I'm very bad at coding. This video may be especially helpful to newbies like me. I found the installation quite painful. That probably reflects my own incompetence. If you can point out where I could have avoided trouble, please let me know in the comments. Chapter 1, Dependencies. We're currently staring at Rob's GitHub page. We want the PySystemTrade package, and here it is. We scroll down to find some information about installation. I immediately noticed there are dependencies. Python 3.x, and various libraries. If, like me, you're running the Anaconda Python platform, you probably have several of these already, and you probably have Python 3 point something, maybe 3.8. But you may not have all of these libraries. I did not have Quandl, I did not have IB in sync. To correct that, from Jupyter, I opened a terminal. And I typed in the following commands: pip install Quandl, pip install IB in sync. Just so happens I've already installed these, but for you, you might not have, and it will hopefully run smoothly and actually install. By the way, what is pip? It is the standard package manager for Python. It allows you to install additional packages that aren't part of the standard Python library. Pip stands for either pip installs packages or preferred installer program. Rob says make sure you get the Python 3 versions of the relevant packages. Sudo pip3 install. You may have noticed I didn't type pip3, I just typed pip. Didn't seem to do me any harm. I assume my machine correctly assumes I am referring to the default version of Python, which I have, which is Python 3. And as for sudo, well, according to Google, that is a Linux command that temporarily increases the privileges of the user. It is analogous in Windows to run as administrator. But anyway, for me, pip install Quandl and pip install IB in sync did the job. So I think we have all the dependencies sorted. Let's move on. Chapter 2, git clone. Unfortunately, we can't type pip install PySystemTrade because, as Rob says, his package isn't hosted on pip. So the code that we have to, so to get the code, the easiest way is to use git clone blah blah blah. I tried running this in the terminal and I tried running it in a blank Jupyter notebook and it didn't work. I got error messages basically saying the machine doesn't know what you're talking about, don't recognize what git clone means. According to Google, git clone is a Git command line utility that is used to copy an existing GitHub repository. And obviously in this case, we're trying to copy Rob's GitHub PySystemTrade repository. For my machine to make any sense of the command git clone, I think it's necessary to install another Python package that Rob doesn't mention in the dependencies here. It's called gitpython, and you can install it with this command, gitpython, pip install gitpython. Now I'm going to import git. Well, if I try to run that when I first started out, I would get an error that would look like this: import error bad git executable blah blah blah. Why? Because apparently the gitpython library requires that you have git installed on your machine. So from the official git page, you can download git for Windows, which is what I did. Then I just followed the steps. I didn't change any of the settings. I just it clicked next on every single box until it was installed. And then I thought I will have some success running import git. I didn't actually. I had to restart Jupyter before Jupyter would recognize that I had installed Git. But when I did restart, then import Git runs without complaint. And then I tried to run this line thinking this is definitely going to work now, and it didn't. I got this invalid syntax error. Fortunately, I found a fix. I had to insert an exclamation mark. I don't particularly know why. I didn't really read too deeply into why an exclamation mark is required. By the way, this line would definitely not have been successful if you hadn't yet installed Git, because I tried and it gave me an error. When you run this line with the exclamation mark, you may be greeted by something like this. It starts running, cloning 16%, 17%, and so on until it hits 100%. Chapter 3, setup.py. What else did Rob say? He said, after you've run this, run one of these 3 lines. I didn't want to run the third. It didn't look right for me because it references sudo. It feels Linuxy to me. Didn't want to run the second line because I'm not using IPython, I'm using Jupyter. So I tried to run the first. I tried to run that line in an empty Jupyter notebook, and I got invalid syntax. And I was expecting to get an error, partly because why would my machine know where to find setup.py? I haven't said anything about where to find it. I happen to know that setup.py is a file that resides in the PySystemTrade folder. I can see it right here. But the other problem is this is not actually Python code. You should be trying to run this in the terminal. And it's important that when you try to run that line, your machine is actually pointing at the correct directory where you have PySystemTrade. Well, it's important that your machine is pointing towards the PySystemTrade folder. Your location may be a little bit different to mine, but with this command, cd change directory, you can specify wherever it is you want your machine to look. Then when you have that, when you're in the right directory, you can try that line of Rob's Python 3. Won't work for me. Python was not found. I had to get rid of the 3. And then it ran, and loads of white text whizzed past me. Couldn't even have time to read what it was saying. And I thought all was well, but it culminated in an error. It culminated in this error. Setup script exited with error, Microsoft Visual, blah, 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 or greater is required. Get it at this location. So I downloaded this Microsoft installer. And I didn't really know what I was doing. Got to this point. I opened the installer and it says, what do you want to install? And having looked at YouTube videos and Stack Overflow, I decided to have a go at ticking the following boxes, this one and these 2, which was annoying because that's 6 gigabytes. But when I installed it and then restarted my machine like it asked, and then I tried again to run Python setup.py install, it worked. I didn't get an error. The white text whizzes past and it culminates in what seems to be a successful completion. So just to absolutely double check, have I finally installed it correctly? I went to Rob's introduction page where he has some code. I copied it into a blank Jupyter notebook and I ran it, and it ran. So I know I'm in business at this point.